So I'm Alexandria Ingham from Show Snob. How are you?
Good. How are
Good.
you?
Good. So let's jump in with, Parker and Cobb. What was it about these characters that you knew you had to play them?
For me, Cobb was just a conflicted character, and I think when you want to play characters who are up against something, they have a Goliath they have to face in some sort of way to whatever degree. And I think when he notices that something is off here, that's a battle he has to take on, and it's something that he's not really equipped on how to do that. And that's just a great thing to play as an actor. You want conflict, you want problems, and the problems on the show are so large and so you know constant that's what you want. So I was super drawn into that.
Yeah, I'd say similarly the challenge aspect of it. I think Parker has one of the more interesting challenges before her to study somebody she's never met and learn him so well that she has to predict his every move. That's not an everyday audition that comes across your desk. So I thought it was super cool and I really wanted to figure that out with her.
I mean, Parker is such an intuitive character. Like she is able to go, well, hang on, let's hold it. What was that like to prep for and adapt into the series?
I think as far as prep went, it was I prepped in the way that I think Parker would have prepped, which was just like diligent note taking and making sure that I understood where Alexander's story was going as well as Parker's when I was reading the scripts and trying to, he's got panic attacks throughout this season and he's got his family is a big element. And so I'm sure Simu was doing all of that work in his home, but I was also going through and kind of highlighting and underlining when major life events for him happened as well, because that's something that I would need to know.
And Mark, with Cobb, he is so candid that there is like that moment in the first episode that I kind of laughed out loud at when and then Simu is just like, yeah, thanks for being honest about it. What was that like for you to be able to bring to the screen of just realism?
Yeah, I think you have to be aware, when you're doing something like that, that it is funny, but you don't play into it in any kind of way. And I think there's a part to Cobb that he's just not aware of. And there's so many times where it's people who are kind of like, really should just keep your mouth shut. So I love playing that. I love it's great to play a character who is having an effect on the other characters. That's so important. It's tough to play a role where it's like, here's the file, sir. You know what I mean? You want something that is creating an effect, and you're saying things maybe you shouldn't. And he learns throughout the series. He's learning more and more. And I'm not sure how much you've seen of it, but towards the end of the series, we'll see him in certain like instances with people we saw him earlier with, and he's more comfortable and he's more in control, and he's kind of learned a lot in a short period of time that I think he's learned more in that period of time than his whole life up to that point due to what's happening.
How much of both of your storylines did you know from early on, and how much were you finding out as the scripts came in?
I think at the very beginning, when I was offered the job, I think I had only read two episodes. And then after it got to Toronto, I think there were two more that came out after that. And then beyond that, it was, they were in process while we were beginning to shoot. So it kind of came out in sequence. And so we didn't really know how it was going to end.
I actually got all of them, and they told me all about your character before we
Oh,
even
that's so
started.
interesting. I wish you
So
would have let
weird.
me know. That's crazy.
No, it was the same for me, and like every show is different in how they do that, and I find a lot of times this is the case, which is exciting as the actor as you're shooting to find out more and more.
I mean, this thing, how does it inform how you play the role as you're going on with each episode?
Massively. It's really interesting because in a movie, this is what it is, and maybe that movie was written 10 years ago and they've been trying to get it made, so it really is what it is. And what's cool about a TV show like this is as you are performing and say the first two episodes, the creators might see that and it's like, what was really good was that thing. Let's lean into that. So in a way, I'm not saying that this is always the case or even necessarily the case with Copenhagen Test, but you're kind of informing one another slightly, and the way the characters interact. It's like, Sinclair and Melissa are really good together. Like, I'm not saying that's what the writers did, but I do think that there is something happening. This really like copacetic thing is happening throughout the series where everyone's informing everyone else. And so learning more about yourself, you've maybe even put that forward a little bit in what you're doing, or what you're not doing. It didn't really work, or who knows. I don't know how the writers do it, but I do think that that is a really like organic part of the process that's cool when it occurs, so that it's not as rigid as a film.
Well, thank you so much for your time. That's all I've got for you, but I can't wait for people to see it because I love it.
Great,
Thank
thank
you
you.
so much.
Thanks.